say I want to sell a company then, from your 3 exits, what are the things where you're thinking, God, if I knew that before I'd sold all 3 of them, I'd go back and do this differently?
To some extent, I just felt a drain on the business.
That's the ultimate success, though.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where you've built it and you're just a pain in the arse for it,
Exactly, yeah.
you've won. In your years being involved in communication, what stands out where you're like, people really aren't getting this and this is what they're doing wrong?
Oh, that's a big question. And a huge number of small businesses do that really badly. And that's a mistake. You're missing lots of opportunities. This isn't just a small business issue. This happens in big corporates as well. You get people in positions of leadership and management that think if you've survived 5 years in business, you're doing okay. But at that point, you normally either need to...
Paul,
Yes.
what business owners do you think will find your knowledge most helpful for? In this conversation, the things we're going to go over, who is it going to be most helpful for, do you think?
I would imagine it would be startups and SMEs, especially in the early stages. So people that have been in business 2, 3, 4 years, even up to the 5-year mark. If you've survived 5 years in business, you're doing okay. But at that point, you normally either need to have some kind of growth strategy, or you're going to consolidate and do something else. If you see what I mean.
Yeah. All right, break those down. Give me an explanation for each one. So have a growth strategy or consolidate.
Yeah.
Because you was talking about that's what you kind of gone through at the moment. So start with growth strategy.
So basically, if you're going to grow the business, you need to start working on the business and not in the business, as they say. And you need to start thinking about where your potential to grow is.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what your business is, what your market is, what your demographics are. But a lot of small businesses will start very local, for instance. Yeah. So you get established. You're based in Maidstone in Kent. So your immediate clients around mid-Kent. Assuming what you do isn't online or something like that, because then it could be a bigger market. So you get to a point where you need to grow the business, you need to expand, and there are a number of ways you could do that. You can expand geographically, you can expand overseas, you can expand into an export market. You can expand by growing the people that work with you. So most startup businesses and early stage businesses are owner managed. So I don't know, if you started a plumbing business, you're normally a plumber and you're normally doing the plumbing, you're fixing tap washers and stuff like that. If you're going to grow, you've got to get to a point where you have other plumbers, because you can only do so many hours in a day yourself. So your growth strategy then comes, how do I acquire talent to work with me? And talent management then becomes a completely different issue to managing taps.
Yes.
So there's loads of challenges and things to do like that. If you look at it, if you take someone like Charlie Mullins of Pimlico Plumbers, using plumbers as an example, he was a plumber. But 5 years into his business, he never went near plumbing. It was a completely different thing. So there are two elements to it. If you decided to grow, you have to understand what that means in terms of your own work and what you're going to do, and how you're going to grow as a person, because you're going to need skills that you probably haven't used before, and may not even have initially. For me, that's part of the excitement of growing, because you're learning new stuff. I hate getting bored. Once I've done a couple of years or something, oh boy, I cracked that, done that. I might have done it badly, but I've done it. And I'm bored and I want to do something else, which is where the other strategy comes in, which is you might not grow. What you might do is diversify. Now, for me, for most of my business life has been about diversifying rather than just growing. So I've had businesses that have grown. So Jobs in Kent, for instance, was a multi-million-pound business. It grew and grew and grew. But I got to the point where I wanted to do other stuff, so I diversified. Opened a radio station, invested in an editing hub, started a co-working space, I bought a web design agency and things like that. So you move into other marketplaces. The rationale for something like that is so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have all your eggs in one basket, but for me, that's not where I wanted to be. So, I got a business to a certain place, then I diversify and do something else within the same overall structure. So you have a business group structure with different elements to it.
Yeah, so going back onto when you talked about growth strategy, I always think of it as many of us start a business, like going with the plumber example, many people are a plumber and then they start their business and it's normally out of some kind of frustration. They were working in the company and really annoyed by something and they're like, I can do it better.
I could do that better. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you start to grow it and then, as you say, like looking after the actual plumbing itself is very different to looking after people. And then I think of it as you need to learn to become like a conductor or the orchestrator of it, and you need to be able to, like the whole phrase of like working in versus working on, like such a big difference there, and they're totally different things. And many people start a business because of the core offering of what they do and working in it. And then it's this journey of going, oh, what is working on it? And it's the case of like stepping back and making it into this system that runs itself. And you've got a team of people, but that's not just the plumbing. That's all the administration behind the scenes. That's the complaints department, the HR, every facet of it, the market and the sales. And a lot of businesses, like a lot of what my work is like looking at people where they start with a core offering, but it's like that's just one component. And then you've got to think about who are your ideal clients and build that offering and layer that core offering in ways where there's different parts to it, where people are going to gradually build a relationship with you. And then, whereas obviously when we're employed and doing the job, it's just, well, I'm employed to go and do the plumbing. And so that's what I do. But when you start,
and you can diversify and expand in slightly different ways. So sticking with the plumber example, you could add electrical work. Yeah, so you become more of a general.
Which is what Charlie Mullins did.
Yeah. But you're kind of sticking within the core business, and you become, Paul's Plumbing and Electrical Works.
Yeah.
And it also depends on whether you do domestic or commercial, or whether you do both, or you can be a plumber and then decide to have a chain of hairdressers.
Yeah.
Just as a random example. But the thing that you just kind of highlighted is also the main thing there, which is one of the things you are diversifying and growing is yourself. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. Most small businesses start based on the skills of the person that's starting the business. Yeah. When you get to the point where you're employing other people and doing other things, you need a whole different set of skills. Leadership skills, management skills, accounting skills, finance skills, HR skills, or you need to be buying those things in. But even if you're buying them in, you need to understand what you're buying in and why you're buying them in. So some people like that. They like to get away from the tools eventually and build that. Other people struggle with that. Yeah. They'd much rather go, you're not doing that right, you need a left-hand spanner on that. At which point I'd say, well, is your strategy right? If you're, why don't you just have a team of plumbers that you run? Why are you trying to build something that you can't do, don't want to do? Because there's no right answer. You can go anywhere you like. And also, contrarily, if you don't want to grow, nobody said you had to. Yeah. And in fact, for a lot of self-employed people, there's a natural cliff edge at which they stop, which is now just under £90,000 a year turnover, which is when VAT registration kicks in. And you'll find, if you look at the stats, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses that get to 85,000 turnover after 9 months and then stop work. And they'll go on holiday for 3 months because they don't want to go over that threshold and have to become a proper business, if you see what I mean.
That's a big qualifying factor of I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who's got a company and they're B2B and my main business is B2B and we're not VAT registered yet. That's all happening in the new year, but we was having a kind of conversation of the whole factor of if you are B2B and suddenly there's an invoice with no VAT, it's like, is this a mistake? But it is like a big qualifier of, and it's a bit of a red flag where it's like, if you're not VAT registered, it's like, well, why are you not VAT registered? You haven't you've got to go through the proving ground, and that's one of the components is being VAT registered. And on the point there you said about diversification as well. So using the plumber example, and you talked about becoming plumbing and electrical, what if there is someone listening where they're thinking, oh, that sounds like a really great idea, but Paul, I don't know how to do electronics. Like, I'm a plumber, I've got my plumbing business and I'm growing a team, but I really love that idea of going into electrics as well, because we're always passing work with other electricians, but I don't know anything about electronics.
Yep. You have to have the confidence to ask questions. Yeah. What? And this isn't just a small business issue. This happens in big corporates as well. You get people in positions of leadership and management that think that they should know everything. Yeah. And they find it incredibly difficult to go, I don't know about that. I don't know how that works. Yeah. But you don't know how it works. And there's no, one of the great things is finding people that do know and picking their brains and asking them. And out of that, you could find potential. So if it was me, if I was a plumber and I was looking to diversify into electrical work, I'd find people I knew that did electrical work. Because one of the reasons I suspect that you think about doing that is you keep getting asked to do electrical work. And I'm assuming that, like most people, you go, well, I don't do it, but I know a guy called Hayden that does. Yeah. So you'd be passing on work. If I then thought, you know what, I ought to be doing this myself, I would come to you and go, so what's the ins and outs of the electrical business? What do I need to know? And they go, we're on the 18th edition or whatever they are at the moment. And you go, well, what's that? And they go, well, that's the qualification you need to have to install, electrical systems. Oh, right. Is it onerous? Yeah. It's a pain in the arse. Or whatever. So you pick people's brains. It's one of the beauties of networking. In business. A lot of people do networking because they either think it's a social activity, which it can be, or it's a sales activity, which it can be. But for me, it's also an information gathering activity. When I go networking, I spend more time going, well, what do you do then? Well, how does that work? Why do you do it like that? Have you always done it like that? Because one, you're looking for opportunities, and two, you're looking for knowledge of how to do things. So it's a different skill set. It's a skill set of analysis, of looking at demographics, looking at markets. I've quite often had people. I had someone come to me a few years ago, well, about 8 or 9 years ago now, and they wanted to open a florist shop. Why do you want to open a florist shop? Well, because I'm a florist. Yeah, that makes sense. Where do you want to do it? I want to do it in my high street. Okay. So there's no florist there. And I'm like, yeah, there's 3. All right. How many florists do you need in the high street? And what have you seen that's different that you can offer that the other 3 aren't? And they just looked at me blankly because they wanted to open a florist shop. They hadn't thought about the market or any, how it would work or who it would work for or why it would work. So even if you're an expert in a field, it doesn't mean to say that you should start a business in that field unless there's a space for you to do it. Now, there's no problem with starting a business that's in competition. There's very few individual businesses that work that don't have competition, so there's always going to be competition. But you've got to be sensible about the market that you're going to attack. And if you're going to have a fixed retail store, your market is within kind of 2 miles of where it is. So if you've got lots of other people in that 2 mile square, you're going to all struggle. So you might want to go and do it somewhere else. But a lot of people don't think, and they go, oh, well, but I live here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, in terms of starting a business, and like when I think now, how would I go about starting my next business? It's complete. Like, I feel from having a few different ones, is I've learned how to start them now. And so I'm going to add another point to your networking where you say like it's part of sales, it's part of acquiring knowledge and learning. I'm going to pause the conversation for a moment because I'm going to tell you about one of our sponsors. And actually this is a really cool story and quite a shocking one actually. So let's dive into this. IT Manager Services, got talking to Tom. So I want to tell you this story of one of his clients that was an accountancy franchise, that it turned out that their cyber security insurance was actually void because of what their IT provider, their previous one, was doing, or rather not doing. It's definitely something that if you're running a business, you want to watch out for. So the problem was they weren't receiving the quality of service that they were expecting or were promised. So when Tom first met them, they were unhappy with their provider, just through certain things such as they were supposed to be getting all of their software and all of their activity backed up. Turns out it wasn't actually being backed up. They were supposed to have all of the servers moved over to the cloud. That hadn't happened. So you can imagine, big problem. They were annoyed, frustrated, hence why they've called Tom in. So getting started with IT Manager Services, Tom just made sure to get on top of everything. Upgraded all the servers to the cloud, made sure everybody had their own license and account for privacy. So I was using Microsoft, but they had to make sure that every single staff member had their own license, so they weren't accessing each other's accounts and emails and whatnot, because the previous company hadn't looked after that, and it was just a key problem that they need to solve that didn't even realize they had. But also gradually started building more security and automations within their systems that they were using, just to make things more efficient for them. But it was in this part that they actually discovered a key problem was their cybersecurity. Turns out it was actually completely void because they didn't meet the due diligence of all the requirements of what they need to have in place for their IT. So now, as a result, of course, their cyber insurance is covering them and they're fully compliant with it. They're now way more efficient in their day-to-day practice and procedures just because of the automations that have been put in place on their systems. And this is all something that Tom and the team at IT Manager Services have done for many of their clients. So what I'd recommend, just for peace of mind, give IT Manager Services a call. Another thing that I do it for is I'm out networking to build relationships with people where I'm like, could I start a business with them? Because a lot of what I've, over the last sort of year or two, a lot of what I've really tried to look at is that whole thing of what am I good at and what am I terrible at. I've got a long list of what I'm bad at, but I've got a very small list of things that I'm really good at. Yeah. And so I'm just like, how can I, whatever business I'm in, how can I make sure that I'm only doing those tasks, I'm only responsible for those things, and other people are doing everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then depending how the business is growing, if I'm going to be involved in it. So like with Pink Panda, I spend a lot of my time doing the things that I'm good at now, and the things that I'm bad at, I don't do. So like, hence us being here today and it being in the diary, nothing to do with me, because that's not what I'm good at. But sitting and having a conversation, I love it and I really enjoy it. And eventually with Pink Panda, it will just be something that runs itself that I don't have to be involved in, but I can step in and out. And even the bits that I love doing, but it's just because I want to step away, even though I love doing things in the operations, I want to completely detach myself from it, because one thing that I love more than anything is just building businesses. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, as you can probably agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. You know, so it's quite hard dispensing general information because you know it's as broad as it's long. There's a million different things you can do. There's different ways of doing everything, and there's different rationales. There's different gaps in markets. But although gap in a market is one of those things that annoys me quite a lot, because people use that as an excuse for things.
There's a lot of knowledge that you've got I want to tap into, and funny actually you said about networking for you being a knowledge acquiring exercise as well, and literally for me this podcast as well is I just think like I'm thinking what are the lessons I want to learn, and I'm being selfish about it of like the things that I'm going to ask you about. It's like, well, I really want to know that, but then the whole reason it's a podcast is how can I make this an asset for my business as well and be helpful for people, because for you it means it's a win-win. I get to learn from you. You get to have content that you can then use on your socials that helps showcase your expertise. Yeah. So in terms of, first thing I want to go into is just kind of broadcasting. Like years in radio, you've learned a lot about communication. And so what are businesses getting wrong about communication? So that plumber or that florist, when they're thinking, right, I've got my business now and we're up and running and I need to draw in my ideal clients. In your years being involved in communication, what stands out where you're like, people really aren't getting this and this is what they're doing wrong?
Oh, that's a big question, because you see lots of different things, and I've got lots of funny stories about different elements of that. A lot of people confuse sales and marketing. And marketing is about the message. It's about brand building. It's about establishing yourself. It's about communication and things like that. And a huge number of small businesses do that really badly. Sales is a completely different operation. You can walk up to someone, do you want to buy this ping pong ball? Yes or no? You know, five for £1, or you know, 10 for 50p or whatever. Yeah. Not enough people can articulate what their business does in an interesting way. Yeah. So they go, oh, I don't know, I'll do plumbing tonight, or whatever. Yeah. But what you've got to do is you've got to have a story to tell. Whether that story is written in a blog or a podcast or or face to face. You need a story. And still, so many people shy away from public speaking, for instance. You know, which for me is silly. Before I got into radio, I worked as a motivational speaker for 15 years, so I'm used to doing it. I used to teach public speaking and all the rest of it. But you still see so many people that will avoid an opportunity because they don't want to go and speak in public. And that's a mistake. You're missing lots of opportunities. Because especially if your business is a business that requires a degree of expertise, a bit,
Every business surely does.
yeah, it
Especially
does.
with
But
service-based.
there are, there are different kinds of expertise. What I'm thinking about is, if you're a plumber, you need to know the ins and outs of plumbing, and someone's going to ask you, for instance, if you're a plumber and heating engineer, they're going to ask you about, especially now, about boilers, heat pumps, and all the rest of it. If you don't know what the current zeitgeist is with things like that, or you can't, but you can't articulate what people need to look at, then you're missing a trick, because what you need to do is to establish yourself as someone, as a go-to person in that field. That's the point of kind of communication and marketing, is for you to say, look, if you've got a gas boiler and you've got a 3-bedroom house, and it's more than 50 years old, to put a heat pump in is going to cost you a lot of money, but you will save money over a 25-year period. So it all depends how long you're going to stay in the house, what the house is worth, all kinds of reasons why you may or may not do it. However, if you've got a fairly new gas boiler, what you might want to do is just change the temperature control for the time being, because that will save you 10% on your gas. This is true, what I'm telling you, by the way. Yeah. Heating hub.
I was going to say, it's going to be a heating hub, isn't it? Yeah.
I know sod all about it, but this is what I learnt from that.
Yeah.
There's a thing called flow control on a boiler, and if you set the temperature below 60, it's not the temperature of the radiators, it's the temperature of the boiler. If you set it below 60, you will save about 10% of your gas bill. But when people install them, when the heating engineers install them, they normally install them at 80, so they heat up really quickly, and they go, whew, look at that.
Yeah.
But then you're just burning gas for the sake of it. So the point being, you need to articulate knowledge about the business that you're in, and you need to tell people, potential customers, but you also need to build an image for yourself as a go-to person in your field. And that's where a lot of people start to fall down. Not because they don't know, they have all the knowledge, but they can't articulate it, or they're scared to articulate it. Or they degenerate to, but I need to make some sales, I need to make some money. You go, well, yes, of course, but this is income stream building, rather than just an instant job that'll earn you 500 quid, which is great, but you need to have a series of customers that are going to come on stream without you doing anything, almost. So that's kind of where most people start to fall down, where they get nervous about promoting themselves in public, either speaking with groups of people, or appearing on podcasts, or in fact blogging about things.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. And like one thing in there, there's a couple of things I want to respond to that. So networking as well, like a big thing for that. There's different types of networking, but especially I'm thinking, like, what would that plumber or the florist or the service-based business owner that's out on the tools, I feel like they'll be sitting there thinking, but I just need to do the plumbing. I don't need to go out and speak, but it's all part of that journey of bringing clients onto you and the reason why they buy from you. Yeah. And that whole thing, and that's why it's like starting a business, people start based on that frustration and jump into the operations, but then bringing people in, it's all about, you can't just be good at what you do, it's about having a whole marketing and sales division that brings people in so that you can be good at what you do and do it. And networking, like a big thing that I learned, because the month I started my first business, I have a grounds maintenance, garden maintenance business, and the month I started it, I went along to a network meeting and got involved in that, and that always involved every week standing up for 60 seconds, saying about what you do, introducing yourself and such. And to many people, especially trades, I guess, that are on the tools, they're thinking, why would I go to a network meeting every week and stand? I ain't got time to stand and talk to business owners and do my 60 seconds. But the whole thing is the impact that had on me going and meeting customers or prospects. And so when I started out, I remember I'd get a lot of comments from people where I'm obviously like, I was 21 and I was like, just kind of entering this realm. I've always been quite extroverted and confident, but I'm still entering a very uncomfortable zone where I'm going knocking on people's doors because they've called for a quote, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here to look at your garden, and they're thinking, is your dad around or something?
Yeah.
And so, but the big difference, the catalyst of the network was a proponent to, was the fact of what I found over time was I used to get a lot of comments that are like, oh, you sure about that price? Or you sound quite, oh, I'm not sure you've quite worked out your pricing yet, mate. You got to lower your prices, you're too high. And the more confidence I built in networking and the more I learned about business and how much it costs, I was like, oh, my prices need to go up dramatically. I got less comments from people going, oh, your prices aren't right, when I charged twice as much compared to at the start. And a lot of it was just my communication and my confidence. And the big difference is, like you talk about expertise, like the journey went from me kind of walking in and being like, okay, what do you want me to do in your garden? Okay, we're this much an hour, or it's this price. And it completely flipped when I learned that expertise, and I just became obsessed with marketing and sales and the systems behind it. And so I had a whole process in place where by the time I stepped in someone's garden, they'd already had multiple touch points with my business. We'd already learned a lot about them. So I was just focused on what's the problem, here's how we solve it. And it just became that. And obviously the problem was always around their garden, here's how we solve that for you. And so what our price is the solution to their problem with regards to the garden, rather than just going, cut grass, 20 quid.
Yeah.
And so it meant that in the mind of the buyer, they started to see the money, they were buying the solution. Whereas I think a lot of us, or in our business we start in, we're just like, well, this is what I do. And like that whole thing of like, what do you do? And like the way that we communicate it. So many of us talk about the features of what we do and not the benefits. Oh, I'm a plumber, I fit boilers, or I'm a gardener, I cut grass. Well, people don't want their grass cut. What they want is a nice stripy lawn. So start talking about the nice stripy lawn.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And many years ago, I used to teach public speaking, and there's a very simple set of processes to do a very simple talk,
Go on.
which is called incident action benefit. Right?
Incident action.
Incident action benefit.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you can do this in 2 or 3 minutes. And what I recommend to people that go to a networking meeting where they have to introduce themselves is don't just do one of these. Yeah, have lots of different talks, yeah, as a way of doing it, yeah. So, let me try and think of a way of explaining this. So basically, if you're going to do a talk, let's say you're a gardener, yeah,
Yep.
and you're going to do a talk, and this is how I would start. Yeah, most people when they get up to speak, they say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Paul. I'm from Paul's Gardening Services. We cut grass, or really clever, we make stripy lawns or whatever. Yeah. What you actually should do is you go, blooming hell! I walked in, it was all over the shop, and everyone go, what are you talking about? You go, I walked into this guy's garden. Yeah, there was a pile of bricks over there. There was, a fish pond that had dried up over there. There was some dead dahlias. I thought, blimey, this would be so nice if this had some love and attention put on it. So that's your incident. Yeah, you start off with something that wakes people up, and they go, "What's he talking about? Why is he mentioning this?" You work out the benefit at the end. So when you finish, you go, so what I'd ask you to do is, and this is the benefit, a bit like you said, you end up with a stripy lawn. Yeah. So, and then the middle bit is what you're going to do. Yeah. So the action. So basically, I said to this guy, look, I can give you a nice stripy lawn. I can get you a pond full of koi carp, and I can put you up a pergola over here, which will give you an environment that will be incredibly nice to sit in during the summer and do. I mean, I'm making this up as I go along because I'm not a gardener. I hate gardening. But so basically, what you've done is you've constructed a story out of something that kind of happened to you. It doesn't actually have to have happened to you, but it has to sound real. And that works because you grab people's attention. Yeah, and it's not dull, and it's not a sales pitch. Yeah. You're going, this is what I saw, and this is what I could do, and this is the outcome of it. So so you go, wow, I walked in this guy's garden, it was a dump. It was horrible, it was all over the shop. But I thought, this could be wonderful. It could be such a peaceful garden, and all you needed to do was, and so I did a stripy lawn. I dug out the pond, and I relined the pond, and I put some koi carp in there, and we put a fountain and all the rest of it. And the sound of tinkling water on a summer's afternoon made it sound really lovely. So what I'd say to you is, if you've got a piece of land that you're bored with, it doesn't do anything for you, you don't like sitting out, consider making it into a peaceful haven. So something like I say, you've given them a reason to want to do it. It's like you were saying, basically. For me, that's how you do an introduction at a networking meeting. Whereas 99.9% of people will get up and go, my name's Paul, I'm a gardener. We do grass cutting, we do pond building, and we do decking. and that's it. And you go, yeah, great, okay, fine. Yeah. But you haven't inspired anybody to think, blimey, my garden could do with some of that.
I think a fear that people have, because what I talk to a lot of people about, I think a fear that people have is they want to list all the services because someone that's directly in the mindset of going, oh yeah, decking actually, I want that. But a lot of your buyers aren't thinking right now. You have to educate them. And sometimes people will think about a specific story, be like, yeah, but that story's only talking about one thing. I do all of these things. It's like, yeah, but then that's with your regular effort where you are speaking and you're engaging with people. And especially if you're turning all of those stories into content, is then you're starting to drip feed and you're starting to build this brand of people that your audience discovers that you're the solution to this in your industry. So
the whole idea of speaking like that is the end bit, the benefit. Yeah. So, and that's the bit to work on, is what's the benefit to you? And the thing is, in a gardening scenario, the benefit to you is you work out, you end up with a peaceful haven of summertime bliss. Yeah. But you could achieve that in 100 different ways. Yeah. So that it doesn't actually matter. What you've painted is a picture that says, I want summertime bliss in my garden. Yeah. Now, I'm going to get Hayden to come and tell me how to do that. Now, you might just say, I built a koi, but you might not want a pond. You might not want fish. Yeah. Doesn't matter. The peaceful haven is the bit you're after. And then I come along and I go, right, what we can do here to make this a peaceful haven is we could put a swing over there, we could put a pergola over there, we could build a path there and put a rockery there. Yeah. So your offer will fit whatever you're looking at. You don't have to list everything, because when you're telling people a story, you're not saying this is all we do. What you're saying is, this is what I did for this customer. Yeah. And that's why it works. I mean, you can do the same with plumbing. I was called to look a Victorian house, which had a really antiquated radiator systems, and the guy really needed help with how to heat the home. So we took a look at it, and we felt that whatever, his boiler was wrong, or the radiators needed doing, or you could go a different way. This is apposite for here, because my business partner here, Andy, used to own the old radiator company. So he'd go, if you had nice Victorian radiators in a Victorian house, it would look really much better than it does like this. So again, using your expertise, you're designing a desirable outcome to the business that you're doing. And even if you're going to fix something, you can do a story about it. Go, I got an emergency call late one evening. Guy's bathroom was flooding through the ceiling. The ceiling was coming down. So I jumped in the van. I drove straight over there, walked in the door. What a mess. Yeah. The ceiling had come down and it was flooding everywhere. He says, so the first thing we did, we turned the water off. We found a stopcock, turned the water off, had a look around, found what was wrong. It was some old pipe work. It had rusted all the way through and broken. Yeah. Guy was beside himself, he was doing, but it's not a drama for us. We can fix that, it's not a big deal. I got my icing tool out and I froze the pipes and cut the bits out that was broken, and we welded a new piece in, and it was as good as new within half an hour. Obviously, he had to clear up the damage that it had done, but we got his water back up and working. You can tell any kind of story about anything you have, but people don't tell stories, they give you lists.
Yeah.
But it's about telling a story, and that's why podcasts work, it's why blogs work, it's why videos work, it's why radio shows work, is you're telling a story. And that's the art of communication as far as I'm concerned.
Well, a great example of that actually at networking and talking of stories. So a security firm, the guy that runs it, Andy, I know well. So like you say, like the kind of go-to that most people in that industry would stand up and go, hi, I'm Andy, I run ABC security, whatever, and we do CCTV installs, alarms, da, da, da. But no, he the other day did it and it was so good. He was talking about, he just told the story of a client and said about a client in the area, they had an issue where down their road, it was 3 outbuildings got burgled in one night. So three of this customer's neighbours were all burgled in one night, where guys had come along and just like jumped over, gone in the outbuildings and taken what they could, off they go. His client didn't have anything stolen. And he was talking about, so for all of them now, they've got to go for insurance, they've got to deal with this, that's a huge problem, huge catastrophe. And not only that, the emotional trauma of having some stranger come in and take what belongs to you, and it's like, how secure am I? And why was it that his client didn't have any problems? And then told the story of like, well, what we'd done prior, because someone had tried to rob from and tried to get in the building many years ago, and that's why he ended up working with him, because so they fitted, well, I can't remember, but like fitted an alarm system, CCTV, the security lights and such. And so obviously for these criminals, they'd gone along, robbed from 3, wherever he was in the line, they'd gone to his and gone, oh shit, and they've got floodlights and they've got CCTV, well, off we go, next one. And so told that whole story and then kind of ended it with, so if you have got an outbuilding, just make sure you've got this, because it will prevent that problem. And so instantly everyone sat there is thinking, oh shit.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Obviously you're not touching on every single person there, but there's going to be people that are in that room thinking, I have got an outbuilding, or people thinking, oh, my aunt or oh, my mum. But it's such, as you say, the power of the story is it helps you connect to that humanness of it.
Absolutely, because when you're telling a story, people translate it into their own experience. Yeah, a story happens in your head. Yeah, if you're telling the story is in my head. So if you say garden, the first picture that comes into my mind isn't what you're talking about, it's my garden.
Yeah.
Because that's the one I'm familiar with. So if you say garden, I go, right, I can imagine my garden. If you go, you know, it would look nice with a fish pond, I might go, but I've already got a big fish pond.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter, because you're making someone build pictures in their mind by telling them a story, and they will build pictures based on their own circumstances, not on what you're telling them, because they don't know what you're looking at. They can only see what's in their mind. So in your example of a security company, again, that's right. You might go, I cracked that a long time ago, I got CCTV in my shed, but you might think, but I haven't looked for it for a while. I might go home and have a look at the history files on that, just see if anybody's tried to break into my shed or whatever. Or you might think, I've had CCTV for a long time. I wonder if there's anything better on the market these days, or whether what I've done is good. And sometimes from a sales point of view, it can really work like that, because some people are just show-offs, and they'll come up to the guy at the end and they'll go, yeah, I've had CCTV for donkey's years. Because I cracked that a long time ago. And you could go, oh, Carl, what kind of CCTV have you got? You go, well, I've got an Okikoki 2000. And you go, yeah, well, it's 2021 now, mate. You can get an app-based.
Okikoki 2000. Sorry.
or whatever. And, you know, the guy can go, yeah, they were good in the day. But...
especially if you know the tech and you can go, oh, have you got this? Do you find that it does this? You find, yeah, how do you know that? Oh, just because back in 2020 this problem, and then the new version came out and it's just... Or it's like complementary things like cross-sells, where it's like, oh, yes, you've got CCTV. Have you got security lights as well? Oh, have you got an alarm fitted?
And the funny thing about that is you end up with the big head, the one that I've already cracked this, actually sell themselves, because they've now set themselves up with going, yeah, I'm totally on this. I totally believe in security. And then they've just told you they've got an out-of-date security system. So, so you go, yeah, no, good system, mate, good system. There's better stuff on the market now. So if you ever think about, upgrading, what we'd recommend is an Okikoki 2022. Because that comes with an app and an infrared light and does it? So they've effectively sold to themselves
by putting themselves in the story. Right, I'm interrupting this conversation just because I want to talk to you about one of the sponsors, which I love and get to use every week of my life, and that is Dragon Co-working. This podcast is sponsored by Dragon. And it's also recorded here mostly, depending where the guest is. And I just want to tell you the story of why I work at Dragon. Now, I knew of Dragon like a couple of years before I started working here. And in my first company, I was like, oh, I love this place. Wouldn't it be cool to one day be working here and have an office and whatnot? And sure enough, when I started Pink Panda, I joined Dragon. Just one, because of the culture just drew me in. The type of people that are here, the camaraderie of it, the culture of it just really drew me in. So a great place to work. But there's two key things that it's helped me with. One is loneliness. Like as a solo founder, when I started Pink Panda, just being completely on my own, it helped to come to a place where you're not like, obviously you haven't got a clock in and clock out, it's not a job, but like I'm running my business and having a co-working space. But the key thing was having people I could interact with on a regular basis and actually build like a sense of a community. Like especially like come lunchtime, you're sitting around with a whole group of people and then you've got people to like work with, collaborate and pass ideas between. Which leads me on to the second benefit, and that was problem solving. So I actually had an issue with a piece of content I was producing and it was on the audio and I just wasn't sure how to fix it. And thought, surely someone here knows. And sure enough, by the time I asked 3 or 4 people, someone was actually like, oh yeah, I know a way that you can fix that audio problem. Boom, done, they fixed it for me. So that is a huge benefit. That just instantly made it worthwhile being here, like from a financial perspective. So that's Dragon Co-working. If you want to experience Dragon for yourself, come along, you can have a day pass and experience it for yourself. Back to the podcast. Yeah. And that's something I try and do with networking. Some businesses, it doesn't always work with a business, depending on what industry you're in, and it depends on who you're talking to. Yeah. But where you talk about, like if you're networking and then you help explain what you do with a story of a client you worked with, one thing sometimes I do is, because what I do is B2B, so I can just learn about business. If I meet someone, I'm like, oh, tell me about what you do then. Oh, so you do this. What's that solving for people? Once I've learned all of that and they then ask me, I can use their business as an example. So I'll say, oh yeah, so we, to give you an example, like say, and then I talk about their business and I go, oh, so what's your business like for this? Like when you bring in clients, how does that relationship work? And when you bring staff? And I say, yeah, so like as an example, for someone in your industry, like for example, a security firm, would tell the story, but I would use their business as the protagonist. Yeah. And we'd go through this journey together. And often, like especially if I've worked with an industry, like I've worked with a lot of HR clients, I've worked with people in security, at IT, I've worked with a lot of people in IT. So if I meet someone that's in that industry, I can literally tell the story, but they're the protagonist. Yeah. And so I go, oh, I often face this problem, this challenge, is that right? And they're like, yeah, that is a nightmare. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So we take that and here's how we overcome it. And we go through this process and then the result is that people feel like this. Yeah. And they're thinking, Can we grab a coffee actually? I'd like to see how you do that for my business. And it's like, you make them part of the story. It doesn't always apply, and if you can't, like, if you can make people part of the story, make them part of the story, but otherwise just tell stories of other people you've helped. And because as well, what it does with a story, it's easy to remember. When you give someone a list of things, and it's like if you've ever played the games where they show you a tray of items, and then they're like, right, there you go, and hide it. If you're just going, screwdriver, tack thing, whatever, I don't know, and you're just creating this list, it then becomes so hard. Whereas if you're like, okay, the screwdriver undoes the screw, and then I go into this, and you make a story of it, you'll just remember so much more. Yeah. And that's how our brains work. We love a good story. Yeah. So what about more broadly in business? We've talked a lot about communications and like stepping away and having other responsibilities. What do you think is some of the biggest misconceptions people have about business when they go in and they start? You've started, built, exited businesses. And maybe you were guilty of this yourself, whether it's your own anecdote or just from conversations you've had with people. What are people misconstruing about business when they start?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think a lot of people don't, coming back to what I was saying earlier about demographics and understanding your market, I think one of the biggest failures is people that don't think about what the potential market is for what they can do. So they try to sell what they can do, not what the market needs or wants. Yeah. And that's where they fall down, because they suddenly find that what they're selling isn't in demand or is already satisfied or all kinds of things. I can tell you a really horrible story about that. I was on the radio about 9 or 10 years ago, just finished the radio show, and my phone rang, and a guy rang me and he said, I've just been listening to the radio show. He said, I'm desperate. He said, I've come up with an invention, and I've prototyped it, and I've had the prototypes made, and it all works. And I've mortgaged my house and raised £400,000 to go into production. But I'm looking for some more investors. So, okay, cool. So what is it you've invented? And I was sat in the studio, so I had my computer in front of me. And he said, it's a pet feeding bowl that doesn't, when your pet's feeding, the last remnants of the food get stuck in the corners, and your dog, when trying to eat, will push the bowl away. Because, yeah. So I've invented a gyroscope-based bowl that doesn't move around the floor, so you can eat all the food in it. Okay. And I said, and you've developed this, and you've had a prototype made. Yeah, I had some prototypes made in China, and we've been trying them out, and they work. Okay. And he said, it's a unique concept. And while he's doing this, I'm just Googling pet bowls. I know nothing about pet bowls. And I've gone, right, so how much do they cost to make? And he said, well, they're costing me 14 quid, and I'm retailing them for 25. And I'm going, have you looked at whatever it is, Pets Online or whatever it is? No. They already sell them on Pets Online, £8.50 to £12, depending on the size of the bowl. And there was just silence on the phone. I went, you have investigated this market, haven't you? I've been working on it years. Right?
Working on it, not...
Yeah, but you can already buy them, mate. And you can buy them cheaper than you're having them, that it costs you to have them made. And there was just, but I've mortgaged my house to do this.
Sorry.
So I'm really sorry, mate, but you know they already exist. Unless there's something uniquely different about what you've done, it's already there. And that's one of the things that you can find quite often as well. People come up with an idea for a business, and they get absorbed by the idea, but they don't look at what everybody else is doing as well. Yeah, so they don't keep their eye on the market. And say, you know, is somebody else doing this? It doesn't matter if they are. I'm not saying if someone else is doing it, you just stop. But you need to be aware of where the market is, because that'll inform you of what you do. So if this guy halfway through has gone, blimey, they're building them over there and selling them for 8 quid. If I'm going to compete with that, I've either got to make mine really special for some reason, you know, like gold plated or something, or I've got to add a feature that they don't have, or I've got to make them cheaper. So people make that mistake of not doing market research properly.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I'd say, like one of the most important things about starting a business that took me a couple to realise. So now, for every future business I start, I'm not starting with any type of offering. So I've got a business I want to build that will be essentially like an online membership platform. So in that example, I'm not going to have a single line of code written or anything created before I've got an audience with my potential market that I'm communicating with. Yeah. And to give you an example of doing that, I'm doing that in Pink Panda right now. So Pink Panda is going to introduce a new service. I'm hiring 3 people for it. Right. And for that, rather than like trying to hire, like most people I think would kind of hire the 3 people, somehow find the capital to hire them or get an investor on board and then work on a service and go, right, we've got the service, we've nailed it, this is going to work, we've prototyped, like we've done it in our own business, and then we've worked with a couple others, we know it works, right, let's start marketing and go to work on the sales process. It's like, no, do it in reverse. So I'm like hiring the team and going through that'll take months of just getting to know people. But what I'm doing most is market research, just talking to businesses and going, look, I'm thinking of an idea. Here's the service I'm going to introduce. Can I just ask you a few questions? Get a few basic questions and say, amazing, thanks for answering that. The reason I've asked is because I'm going to build this service. Fundamentally, it's going to do this, it's going to work on this problem, this solution, If you're interested, I'm just putting together a waiting list. No obligation, it's just a case of it sounds like something that would be helpful for you and you're curious to learn more. And what I'll do with my waiting list is I'll just have a few more questions to go through over the next few months. We'll just learn, and ultimately it's just a case of what does this service need to achieve for you to be really helpful and really valuable. And so far, every single person I've spoken to has gone, yeah, put me on the waiting list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah, if you're going to help me, brilliant.
Yep.
And so then over the next couple months, I'll just catch up once a month with some more questions just to learn.
Yeah.
What does it need to achieve? What would the price points be? What are you prepared? How much of your time would it take to then build this service? And all the while I'm doing that, I'm learning what it needs to do, what it needs to achieve. And then from that, I can then work out the input. What does my team need to look like? What are our tasks going to be? And that's then helping me recruit these people. Yeah. And then as I bring them on board, I'm bringing the clients. And then so by the time I've got my team and I've then worked it out and it's worked and we've tested it, I've got a waiting list of people going, this sounds amazing. When can you start? And I'm like, whoa, we'll start when we're ready. Yeah, but when can you start? So the point comes along where it's like, okay, we're ready to launch. I've got a list of people going, come on then, let's go. And it's like, whoa, we can only take on 4 of you. Well, take on me. Here's my deposit. And it's like, completely flip it around.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the other thing that you find with a lot of this is people confuse need and want. Yeah, I don't want to be rude, but there's a huge amount of people that try to go into business doing things like, oh well, I've noticed there's a lot of stress about. Yes, there is. Yeah. So I'm going to be a stress counsellor or a psychotherapist or whatever, and there's a market for that. There's no doubt about it at all. But a lot of people go into that marketplace without thinking about. They identify the need, but they don't identify the want. And what I mean by that is they go, you need it, and the person they say you need it to goes, yeah, but I don't want it. Yeah. I can handle this myself, or I can't afford it, or whatever. So need and want are 2 different things. Yeah, you can see a great need. So one of the big ones is social media. Yeah, every Tom, Dick and Harry in the world wants to start a social media agency. Why? Because they've used Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn for ages, and they think they're quite smart at it. And they look at all the people that use it badly, and there's thousands of them. Yeah. So that's true. So they go, right, all those people could really do with my expertise in social media. That's a need, it's not a want. Yeah, because when you go and speak to them, they'll go, well, I'm not interested. How much? £200 a month? Nah, not paying that just for you to write some tweets. And you go, but your tweets are rubbish. And you go, yeah, but I'm not paying you £200 to write good ones. Yeah, because there's a need, but not a want. And that's where a lot of people come unstuck, that they can see this, well, if I could do that, I could do it better than they're doing it, or I could make a difference to them, or I could help them. But you've got to find people that want to be helped. And that's not as easy, because a lot of people don't want to be helped, or alternatively, they can't afford to be helped. Yeah, they've got no budget to spend on it.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. So the whole need and want thing, I definitely agree. You need to focus on what they want in order to show them what they need to get to what they want.
Yeah.
And that want, I would divide into 2 things. There's the want of the desire they have, and the want to escape what they're running from. And that's so like, if someone comes into the realm of Pink Panda, whenever like saying whether it's a prospect or someone I'm networking with, whatever it is, or a business I'm just getting to know, always the same process of, I want to learn about their business and learn about their problems and learn about their goals. And the whole journey with, like, if it's a prospect for Pink Panda, is don't talk about any of the process. I don't tell them about content and what videos can do and what blog articles can do. I just talk about, what do you want in business? Well, I want to get to a point where there's 12 of us in the team and I do this and I do that. All right, what's the biggest problems? Well, I've got customers don't pay me on time, this, that, and the other. And so what I want is those problems gone. So it's okay, we've got your want. Yeah. Well, here's how we would help you achieve it, and kind of go through that process. And there's not really much about what we do. It's more about focused on what they want and helping them go, oh, well, that is really what I want. So I need you. And that's what we're just trying to create, is that story where the outcome for them is, I need you. Right. And it's perfect. But by focusing on their wants, needs, and that want and need is what they desire and what they're running from. Yeah. Exits. So you've had a few exits, free exits in the last few years. Yeah. What I'd love to see is, I've learned a lot from where I've started multiple businesses and gone, God, if I knew that back then, say I want to sell a company then, from your free exits, what are the things where you're thinking, God, if I knew that before I'd sold all 3 of them, I'd go back and do this differently?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, because with one of them, it was, I wish I'd have done this a few years sooner. It's hard. It kind of depends on your circumstances and why you're exiting the business as well. For me, I had a very definite set of reasons why I was exiting the businesses. Why didn't I exit a few years ago? Because I didn't want to. Yeah. Yeah. It was the right time. There's been 2 times in my life which were the right time for exiting a business, and both of them I ignored because I was enjoying myself. Yeah. Yeah. So many years ago, I had a business that I was offered a substantial amount of money for while I was growing the business. And I went, no, this is cool. I'm really having fun. I'm really doing this. And then fast forward 10 years, and the market had changed rapidly and radically. And the kind of money that I'd been offered 10 years before was nowhere near what was going to be offered now, because the market had just radically changed. So, you missed a point. But even so, I probably, in hindsight, you've gone, yeah, I could have done that. But really, at the time, I just wasn't going to entertain it, because I was really having fun building a business. So timing is a massive thing in terms of making an exit to a business. And it all depends on the basis of which you've done it. So I had a business that I exited recently, the Heating Hub, and that was an investment. I'd put an investment in there. I had an SEIS investment, so the rationale for that was always to exit the business. From day one, it was always build a business, exit, and that's what I did. So that was a no-brainer. Channel Radio was a set of circumstances that said, I need to do something different here. This isn't working for me as it is. It wasn't working for me. It was working, but not working for me. So I came across a way of exiting that business that left the business intact, but enabled me to go and do something different in the same field. So that was a rationale for me. My biggest business, Jobs in Kent, which I sold to the management and staff of the business, was a natural timing thing. Because I'm old now, and I'd spent 26 years building that business, and the staff ran it rather than me. I did other things, really, and to some extent I just felt a drain on the business, because I wasn't.
That's the ultimate success, though. If you get to a point where you've built it and you're just a pain in the arse for it,
exactly,
you've won.
So we came to an arrangement where the guys and girls that ran the business, we structured a deal where they bought me out, basically, and I was incredibly happy with that. That forms the basis of my pension, if you like, from what I earned from that. It was just the right time to do it, and I'm really pleased I did it. But I still got a big affection for a business that I built from scratch, and I still watch them every day and go, "Oh, don't do that," or "Yeah, no, that's a good idea." But I don't interfere, because it's nothing to do with me. They own the business now, and they know how to run it. And we were talking earlier about service businesses and earnouts and stuff like that. In this particular circumstance, it didn't need an earnout, because they knew more about the business than I did, because they'd been working in it for years, and I'd been kind of more and more detached over the years, and more strategic and doing other stuff and looking at other businesses. So they didn't actually need me anyway. I was just, as I say, I was draining on the business. So, from that point of view, it was an ideal scenario. But there are lots of ways to buy out of a business, but there's also lots of ways to buy into a business as well. We don't always think about that. And I was talking to a friend of mine, James, a few months ago about this, and he's been really smart about buying businesses and how you can leverage a business to buy it, leveraging its own assets. So, that it's an interesting thing, because once you understand that, you can then see that exiting a business has a lot of options in it, other than just selling it to the competition or selling it to the staff.
As you said, so for context, before we started recording, having the conversation, so I talked about management buyouts. So because that's what I want to do in the future, is look at, I've got a set of companies I want to build, turn them into a group, and then that group buys companies, and a lot of it would be management buyout, so that rather than having to go there and go, oh, here's £500,000 for your business, it's done over 5 years, where we say, look, your value, we'll agree you're worth £500,000 today, so we're going to buy you for £500,000 over 5 years, but we're going to add value to the business, and we're going to take over and start working, but you'll be with us for 5 years helping us. But then at the end of the 5 years, they've got their money, quite tax efficiently as well, rather than taking a big lump sum. Whereas, as you said, yours, you didn't need to do that, because you had like management team in place that were already involved. They don't need you there anymore. So you can just walk away and say, right, here's the offer. Cool, I'll take that. Off I go.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely something I've learned in the last couple of years is how to be much more strategic. There's ways to get into businesses. So like my most recent business that I'm involved in, rather than having to start something and throw my blood, sweat and tears or money in, was just a case of I had a client and then it was like, oh, hold on, we're very embryonic and you've got some skills. I've got a very narrow set of skills that I was helping them with. And it's like, do you want to be part of this? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. That'll be fun. So then that's what's happened. And then I can earn more of the business based on just achieving what we're doing and keep working. And as you said, so there's a lot of creative ways. I'll be curious to talk to your friend, James.
Sorry?
Did you say your friend James is doing a lot of creative?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be interested to talk. Right, I appreciate I've taken your time and you've been very generous with it. So my closing tradition on the podcast is a question. What's one thing that exists within the world today that you hope will one day be eradicated?
Oh, well, you get obvious things like homelessness and poverty and poverty and things like that. I think at a global level, poverty needs to be eradicated, and we're kind of moving that way. You know, having been around a long time and look at how the world's progressed. When I first started work in the 1970s, there were adverts on TV about mass starvation in Africa and stuff like that. Whilst it still happens, it now happens mostly because of stupid human behaviour. I mean, like wars or things like that. Whereas back then, it was about crop failures and people not producing food or whatever. That has moved on enormously, but there's still lots of poverty. There's poverty in this country. You know, we're an advanced Western nation, and we still have poverty here. Although we have to remember that a lot of it's relative, to how things were. But poverty, I guess, is the thing. But being more specific about this country and the things that I'd like to see happen, one of the big problems that we face is housing. And young people have decided they hate boomers, because we've all got expensive houses and they can't buy one. What they don't understand is why that's happened. And it's a fairly complex set of things that have happened to make that happen. But we don't build enough houses. And we certainly don't build enough social housing. And that's something that needs to change at a more parochial level.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Paul. It's been a good, fun conversation. Feels like we're only halfway through it. It's, I've got so much I want to ask, but we can always talk again.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really enjoyed it. Good to talk to you.
This conversation has been brought to you and produced by Pink Panda Productions, where we make marketing for purpose, that purpose, build your business. How effective is your marketing? Don't know? Want to know? Take our 2-minute quiz and find out exactly how effective your marketing is at drawing in your ideal client, your ideal team member, and your ideal partner, so that you can stop wasting so much time interviewing candidates that just aren't quite the right fit, stop wasting so much time meeting with prospects that aren't ready or aren't right for your business, and find great partnerships to help build your business with other businesses. So take the 2-minute marketing quiz to find out how effective your marketing is. Look in the link in the description to take your quiz and get your score.